year before, and he swears that he saw something in the trees that looked sort of like a man but way off, and it disappeared before he could have another look. So, going to this mountain, I was already thinking to myself, oh great, I bet we're going to come across some sort of Bigfoot shit or whatever. But I'm stoked for the great views, so it wasn't really a big deal. We reach this mountain and begin making our way up, and I immediately just feel really uneasy, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. We probably spent a good hour driving to the top because we kept getting lost on side roads for small amounts of time, and I'm just not getting good vibes at all at this point. There was one spot in particular too that just made my skin crawl. Normally when I get a bad vibe, I can kind of like feel around. I don't know if that makes sense, and I kind of get a sense of where it's coming from, but this time I just couldn't pinpoint it. Everything around me was just giving me this really off feeling. But we reach the top and have to turn around because our dumbasses didn't realize that they closed the top viewpoint for the night and blocked the road with a gate, which in hindsight we're actually both very grateful for now. On the way down, I noticed that my friend is visibly on edge too, and he didn't believe in the paranormal at all and thought that I was full of crap when I would tell him about my experiences. We both just wanted to get the hell off that mountain though, and we keep seeing stuff moving in the trees, but couldn't determine if it was just shadows playing tricks or not. It very well could have been, mind you. When we're a good portion of the way down, we stopped the car for a split second because there was a pretty view just from the road, and we at least wanted to see some sort of view since the top was closed. So we stop and we both hear this noise that's unlike anything that I've ever heard. It did not sound like any animal, and I spent the whole next day listening to various animal noises to try and compare, and nothing at all came close. It sounded really aggressive and almost metallic, and it came from directly behind the car. A side note too, whenever I've had an experience where I'm positive that I've encountered something, my eyes start to water and I sort of just cry, and the instant that I heard this sound, my eyes started filling with tears, so I already knew that something sketchy was up. We both just look at each other though, and we can just feel this thing. I've never felt just so much evil and hate in my life. It felt like it was directly behind us, and it just felt really big and really pissed at us too. To be quite honest too, I've never been so full of just absolute terror. So my friend screams and he just floors it, and I instantly shine my phone light into the back seat because I felt like whatever was there was right in the car with us, and I remember saying, "What the hell was that?" as he's flooring it, and he said, "I don't know, but I don't want to hear that ever again." So I'm basically sobbing as we're hauling ass down that mountain, and I'm trying to calm us down by talking about my history class or just anything, and we finally reach the road and get our asses home, and I remember him turning to me and saying, "I know exactly what you've been talking about now." Now, my friend is the biggest skeptic, and even he absolutely could not explain what he heard and felt. We get back to his place though, and we're flipping our shit, and he starts to look into that mountain and the tribe that lives next to it, and I begin to wonder if his experience the year before had anything to do with it. And he immediately finds native folklore from the local tribes that have to do with these creatures called stick Indians, which are malevolent forest or mountain spirits that sort of resemble what we think of as Bigfoot. They lead lost travelers astray with eerie noises and clicking and whistles and whatnot. I'm not extremely educated on this topic though, so any further information or ideas would be appreciated. Anyway, he's convinced that that's what we've encountered, which definitely fits everything we experienced on that mountain. I also found a local post from a few years ago about skinwalkers that detailed an experience very similar to ours on that same mountain. Now, let me just say that I have no clue what we encountered, so this is all just speculation. I just know how scared I was, and normally, when I have an experience, I kind of freak out for a minute or two, and then I'm fine, and think it's actually pretty cool. But this time around, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it again. I'm actually still pretty terrified, and have trouble falling asleep, because all I can do is think about what happened. whatever we both felt was just extremely negative and really aggressive. Now, to the skeptics out there, we definitely potentially could both be idiots and nothing supernatural at all occurred, but I don't know about this one. The fear that we felt was more than just being spooked out by something. It was full on fight or flight mode, and I was completely overwhelmed with the feeling from that thing, and I never ever want to feel that again, and especially never go back to that mountain again. Even my friend is having trouble with it too, and like I said, he's the biggest skeptic I know. Anyway, do any of you guys have any thoughts, or are we just being idiots? Or did we encounter a stick Indian or something else? The stick Indian theory does make the most sense to me, as we were on historical native land, and maybe it was angry because of its home being logged and just wanted us out of there or something. Also, maybe the blood moon and the eclipse caused a spike in supernatural activity or something. I don't know what it was, and sorry for such a long and twisty post, but I'm also trying to make sense of this as I write it. Any thoughts or opinions or similar experiences would really be very much appreciated. When I was younger, a group of friends and I were longboarding around a nature park near my house. This nature park had a lake that was bordered by a walkway on one side, with lights, maybe every 50 feet or so, I'd say. But we were standing maybe 2 or 3 lights from the end, throwing bread into the water for the ducks, when we decided to leave. So we start kicking, and I'm at the back of the line when I turn around and notice standing in the beam of the last light, maybe 40 or 50 feet away, is what looks like a woman in a white gown with black hair, walking towards us. She had her arms crossed as if she was cold, and I watched her for maybe 4 or 5 seconds when she looked up at us and then set off towards us at a dead sprint. We start laughing, thinking that someone's just messing with us, but we started kicking pretty hard. Now, it's important to note that when you're kicking hard on a longboard going downhill, you can easily cruise at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. So we're all laughing or whatever when I turn around again and this woman is catching up to us. We had never seen someone run that fast for that long, and we all panicked a bit and began kicking as hard as we could. We were easily at 20 to 25 miles per hour at this point, and as we hit the last light, I dared to turn my head again to notice that this woman was only about 15 feet behind us now, and her features were really exaggerated. Her arms were just way too long and her hands were huge, and her fingers looked like they had extra joints in them or something. I couldn't see any detail in her face too, but she was soundlessly keeping pace with my friends and I. The nature park had what we called the boardwalk that connected it to the nearby subdivision of neighborhoods where I lived, and we were kicking as hard as we could for it. She was maybe 5 feet behind me when we hit the wood of the boardwalk, and as soon as we did, she just stopped dead in her tracks. Like, instantly just stopped. No sound, no panting, nothing. We went maybe 50 feet down before we stopped and watched this thing, and she stood there for a minute, and then she turned and walked into the tree line of the nearby woods. But then, she squatted behind a tree and poked her head out, watching us. Needless to say, we promptly got the hell out of there. My friends and I, we've only talked about this once, and my buddy, who was at the front of the line of the friends who was kicking, he was kicking so hard to get away that he actually tore a hole in his shoe. If any of you guys have any idea of what could have pursued us that night, I sure would love to hear it. So I used to do some house cleaning for a young couple that I knew, and the husband worked out of town and they had 3 really young kids. I generally come in once a month or so whenever the place got really bad. Now, the woman had mentioned beforehand that there were some paranormal events going on in the house. She didn't tell me what they were exactly because she also wanted me to come in at some point and do a clearing on the house. Yes, I clean houses, but also do clearings. She was hoping to get some confirmation on what she and her family were picking up on, but the first time I cleaned for them, I did a walkthrough and felt nothing until I got down to the basement level. There was a family room down there and also a bedroom with an ensuite bathroom. Her 5-year-old slept in this room and made an absolute nightmare of a mess in that bathroom, with toothpaste and crayons just all over the walls and wet toilet paper all over the floor. Anyway, I could feel something in the bathroom just kind of watching me. It didn't feel malevolent in any way, but just sort of watchful, and I kind of felt watched in the family room too, but it didn't feel like the other room, and again, it was just watchful. Other than that too, the house felt fine, totally clear and very positive. The woman confirmed that her daughter always saw a black man standing in her bathroom too, so that was confirmation for them. The woman had seen a man on a horseback in the living room once too. The house was actually less than 10 years old, and the whole area had once been farmland. Now, one day, the woman took her kids out of town for the long weekend, but wanted me to do some cleaning. She hid her house keys in the kids' wagon in the front yard, and she asked me to be careful to put the keys back in the wagon, as this was the only set that she had. I came in, cleaned both the lower levels, then started in upstairs in the master bedroom. I was in the process of cleaning the ensuite bathroom when I heard people talking down in the main entrance. The area was tiled with a big set of stairs going up to the bedrooms, so their voices carried and were actually quite loud. I 100% believed that it was relatives of the woman at the time, and I could hear them talking about her. They mentioned her name and said that she was out of town, and it sounded like one woman and 2 men. But one of the men sounded very elderly too, so I was thinking her parents and her grandfather came over or something. The woman was the loudest and seemed in charge, and I heard them talk about me, and the woman said, "Oh, she's cleaning the house for Sarah." I also heard her say something about the house keys, and I had actually put them beside my purse on a little shelf by the front door at this point. I felt very self-conscious being upstairs while they were standing there talking about me, so I took my gloves off and I went downstairs to introduce myself. But when I got downstairs, there was no one there. I hadn't heard the door close or anything, nor had I heard it open to begin with. But the door was locked too, and the crazy thing was that there should have been melting snow and just kind of crud on the floors. It was winter, and 3 people coming into a house and standing in the front entrance would have left some sort of puddle on the floor. I was kind of amazed and actually pretty excited about the whole thing, and I wasn't frightened in the least bit. But they felt very parental and kind of protective of the family, and I was excited to tell my client what I had experienced. And so I went back upstairs and finished cleaning. When I went to leave, though, the keys, they were gone. Now, I know for certain that I had left them on the shelf by the purse. In fact, whoever was downstairs sounded like they had seen them too, since they mentioned them. And I ended up spending an extra hour and 45 minutes looking for those damn keys. I called out to the ghosts and begged the ghosts and got mad at the ghosts, tried to bargain with them, but it was all to no avail. I didn't have my client's cell phone number and only her landline too, and the lock was a deadbolt, so I couldn't lock it without the keys, and the back door was also a deadbolt. I had no numbers for any relatives, and I was beginning to envision having to spend the entire weekend staying in that house alone. At this point, I was kind of beginning to feel scared, not wanting to sleep there. And I don't know if it's just me or what, but it kind of felt like maybe they wanted me to stay there or something. I searched everywhere though, and all 3 levels, under couch cushions, in the kitchen drawers and cupboards, the kids' bedrooms, where the toys were and everything. I did a thorough check of the basement and the bathroom, and even looked outside where the keys had originally been, and I was about to give up when I thought that I'd recheck the basket on the kitchen counter, and it had bread and buns in it, and at the bottom of the basket there were some old flyers, and the keys were sitting neatly on top of those flyers, under the bread. At this point, I had chills running down my spine, because there was just no way that I could have missed them the first time. I mean, the keychain had a huge gummy flip-flop thing on it, and a mini Tupperware container on it too, and you just couldn't miss it. Needless to say, I got the hell out of there and locked the door behind me, so relieved not to have to stay there. When I told the woman, after she got back, She said that they often had important things go missing, her husband too, and it was more than her. She also said that her husband had heard people talking before, but she hadn't. I still don't know what happened that day, but when the thought crossed my mind that maybe whoever was there wanted me to stay there, I don't know what it was, but I just kind of got this feeling like maybe they were trying to trap me in that house or something. So, I'm extremely skeptical about the paranormal, but this experience kind of blew my mind, so I thought I'd share it. So I used to live in a building that had 8 separate flats in it. I didn't interact much